Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Disgustingly Resilient podcast and another episode of the series Assembly to Annihilation. This is the series aimed at the new players to the faction. Maybe you're brand new to the hobby in general, or maybe you've moved over from another faction to a better faction. But yeah, previously on this series we were looking at the combat patrol box, what you can get out of it, how to assemble it and how to play it. Hopefully, it's been like 2 weeks now, hopefully you guys have had a chance to get your combat patrol or get your first few units, sort of build them up, get used to painting, maybe play a little game with them. But today we're going to actually look at starting to expand our collection to 1,000 points, which is kind of like the next milestone a lot of people do for their army. So we've got combat patrol, 1k, and then eventually work ourselves up to 2k. So today what we're going to do, we're going to go quickly through some basics, and then we're going to look at 3 staple units I can recommend. If you sat there and you think, oh, I've got all my stuff done, I need to go buy something, but I don't know what to go buy. I've got 3 staple units that have basically always been good historically in Death Guard, and you're always going to be happy to have on your shelf. So we're going to have a quick look at them. And then we've got 3 example lists made by myself, Will and Dave. You can tell the different playstyles between them. And it's just 3 different examples of 1,000 point lists that basically are quite different, will teach you to play differently and teach different play styles. So you can have a look at them, maybe draw some inspiration, maybe just take those lists exactly as they are and take them and play some games and start to explore and understand what you are as a Death Guard player, the kind of things you like, the kind of things you don't like, and then that will inform you to build forward towards your 2,000 points. Okay? So let's go into it. So, again, before we go anywhere, always remember the golden rule, everybody. The golden rule is that when you're starting this hobby, do what is fun. Do not get carried away in competitive. Don't get carried away in meta. You don't have to worry about any of that. When you're starting out, you're playing the game, focus on what's fun. If a model I say looks really cool to you, and I say it's only okay, I'd recommend getting that model. Because, honestly, Death Guard, most units are pretty damn good at the moment, but you enjoying the hobby, like enjoying painting and playing and using the things you think is cool, is going to be way more important than you taking what's meta, because you won't even understand it really anyway at the moment. So don't worry about it, just have fun with the hobby. So please remember, the golden rule is always whatever you think is cool is the right thing to do. Okay, so things to consider. So first up, I'll be blunt. The game is not balanced around 1k games. So you can play against your opponent. You might get a blowout win or a blowout loss. Sometimes they turn out to be balanced and it can be quite fun. But sometimes these games are just going to go the wrong way for one player or the other. The game isn't really balanced around 1k, so don't take anything you experience at 1k to be like a snapshot of an army's power level. Some armies require a lot more supporting units to sort of get the cogs going, and they'll be better at 2k, whereas some armies just have innately powerful data sheets, which are the ones that are going to stomp at 1k. So just bear in mind that. It's not to put you off playing, definitely still play 1k, because it's going to teach you the core mechanics, how to play the game, you know, how to roll the dice, get quicker at playing. But just be aware that the things you see at 1k aren't necessarily impactful of the meta at 2k, or how the game actually feels at 2k, okay? As we said, let's not focus on competitive. Today's lists aren't really focused on competitive. We are looking at the next point, which is we're trying to get you staple, solid core units that have always been good or are currently pretty damn good, so that when you build this into your collection, you're going to have some solid units that aren't just flavour of the month picks, that are going to be able to be carried forward and still perform for you despite the meta changing. But we don't want to focus too much on competitive, because competitive itself can sometimes take units that are normally bad but are just really good at the moment. Maybe they're not that fun, maybe they're not Death Guard specific and you're not really that interested in them. So we've got a mixture of the list we're looking at today, and there's some lists will use Death Guard focused only stuff, some use some generic chaos stuff, but we don't want to focus too much on competitive at this point in your hobby journey. Now, if you do want to get competitive, please check out the other series like Faction Fundamentals, etc., and that's going to help expand that side of the knowledge. But for right now in this video series, we want to focus just on kind of getting you playing, getting you trying lots of different things, learning all the different phases, learning the different unit synergies, things like that. Okay, and that moves on to the next point, unit variety. I wanted to try and not spam units. I'm not really a spammy person anyway. I have you know, spammed like 30 Plague Marines tops usually. But especially when you're new to the army or the hobby, spamming can be boring. Like, you've got all these cool units and you just want to spam one. Now, if that's what's cool to you, fair enough, go ahead, feel free. But for most people, we want to try different stuff. We want to experiment. We want to find out, is this for me? Is this for me over here? Maybe I like tanks. Maybe I don't like tanks. Maybe I'm an infantry person. So getting a bit of variety in there, it's not only going to help you find what you like as a playstyle, but it's also going to help teach you multiple phases of the game. If we bring just melee, that's great and cool. You're going to learn melee a lot, but as an army, Death Guard are combined arms, so we're missing an entire phase of shooting there. So I want to try and get units that are variety of different roles and playstyles, and in doing so, that'll help teach you multiple phases of the game. And as we said, it's going to help you identify your playstyle. Even within the same faction, we have different playstyles. Like myself, I'm quite a toolbox passive player. Will's a very aggressive player. Death Guard Dave really likes his vehicles a lot. It's all different. We're all different. We all play different even within the same faction, okay? And we're going to help you guys discover what you are. So, today we're going to be talking a lot about unit roles, because that's what we're kind of looking at as we expand in the patrol box. So, units have different roles within the game that are there to sort of perform different purposes. So, scoring and utility units like Poxwalkers, Cultists and Rhinos, etc., they're not really there to deal damage. And they don't really survive super well. But what they're really good at is being cheap and scoring. In the game of 40k, you have to score objective cards. Not every mission is just obliterate the opponent, and it might be while you're learning, but in general, the game uses objectives and you have to score them, and to do this, you need to have units give up shooting, give up charging to do actions. Well, we call them actions, but they're not actually called that, they're just objectives. But having units that can do this, that are cheap, like Nurglings, Poxwalkers, Cultists, empty Rhinos, means that your actual killer units are going to be able to run around and score and actually kill the opponent's models, whilst 50-point units of Cultists, Poxwalkers are going to actually be the ones that are winning you the game on points. So we always want to try and make sure we've got some scoring units and utility units, because they're going to be important for when you get to 2k to understand how to win games and not just kill your opponent. We have characters. Now obviously characters come in different flavours. Some are supportive like Biologist Putrefier, and some are more damage dealing themselves like Typhus. Now characters are a core part of 40k. They enhance the squads they're in, or they can sometimes just go alone and be an absolute beat stick of a unit. And having characters in squads is going to teach you the different synergies and different uses for those characters and different like play styles that you can get from them. So for example, Typhus is a great example. Typhus is fantastic when in a squad of Death Shroud Terminators or Poxwalkers, because he's -1 to hit in close combat. So if you combine this with our Contagion, -1 weapon skill, you can be -2 to hit in close combat. Very good. But Typhus also, especially in competitive level, relatively regularly gets ran solo with no squad at all, because of his ability to drop in, do a scoring action, and still use his Mortal Wound ability onto an opponent. And it's very hard to stop Typhus appearing where he wants, because it's a single base. So the more you play with characters, the more you learn, oh, I don't have to always attach them to squads. Sometimes it's beneficial not to, but a lot of the times it is, and what squads do we want to put them with? So playing with different characters is going to get used to them, and going to get used to making the most out of the synergies. Hammer units. Hammer units are the units that are going to be the one that does the most damage. So for example, large units of Plague Marines, large bricks of Death Shroud Terminators, these things hit like an absolute truck. When these things come in, they kind of obliterate whatever they touch. Not much stands up to them. Now it doesn't mean they're unkillable and they're a godlike unit. They can die, Plague Marines especially, but you're having units that are there with the express reason to be an answer. So it's sort of, this is my unit that's going to kill their big unit. Having units like that and understanding how to use them and not throw them away to kill something like 50-point Cultists, which are just there to score in. Because great, yeah, your 280-point Plague Marine unit just obliterated them 10 Cultists, proper, like 4 times over killed them. But now they're dead, because they got shot to pieces, because you got them out and killed Cultists and now you're dead. So it's going to teach you that these units can't just be thrown away. Despite them doing tons of damage, it's knowing when to apply the damage and when to send that unit out, okay? Now, anchor units, on the other hand, are kind of the opposite. Damage output's not really the deal here. What's more important is their ability to stay alive or influence the game by holding objectives or board area. So, Blight Lord Terminators are quite good at this. They're not exactly very damaging, the units, but what they are pretty good at is at being tough and staying alive. A 2-up save, a 4-up invulnerable, 3 wounds, toughness 6. It's quite hard to deal with, especially if you've got 10 of them. And having units like that can set objectives and reliably survive and score you points, again, is another way that you're going to win the game. And sometimes these anchor units work in tandem with a hammer unit. So, for example, the opponent charges their big hammer unit into your anvil. They crash into you, they kill like half your squad because you've got the nice tough guys, and you're like, okay, that's bad for me, but now I've got my hammer unit waiting to countercharge your hammer unit, so your 10 Plague Marines comes in and wipes out whatever just tried to kill all your Blight Lord Terminators, the big anchor unit. And now, because your opponent's lost that really damaging unit, they haven't got an answer for what's left of your anchor. So now, you're quite safe to hold that objective. So these are an important unit to have as well. And the last one is trading or MSU units. MSU stands for multiple small units or minimum sized units. It's different ways. Basically, what it means is rather than taking like 10 Plague Marine squad with all the spells and whistles, instead you take the small size squad, the 5-man squad, because it's cheap. And what this unit can do is it can initiate a trade, which is kind of like in chess where I put something forward, you then take it with a knight in chess, but then I take your knight with a bishop. So it's the idea of giving something small, they give something bigger to kill the small thing, and then you pick up the bigger thing in return. It's what we call trading. And understanding trading is a specific play style of its own. I'm very trade orientated. I love trading. That's when I'm happiest at the game. But having units that can initiate trades is great. If you're against like World Eaters and you've put 10 cultists on an objective, 10 cultists is 50 points. World Eaters don't have guns. So to kill them, they're going to have to charge them, which probably means they're going to have to use either Berserkers or 8-bound. So if a 200 and some point unit of 8-bound charges in to kill 10 cultists and they kill them, great. But then you can then kill that unit back with your own, and you have traded 50 point cultists for 200 and something point 8-bound. That's a win. So it's important to also know units that have that kind of role as well. Okay? So, 3 great additions. These are 3 units that were going to have always been historically good for Death Guard. So, these units have always showed up in Death Guard competitively and Death Guard in general. They're just 3 staple units that have never really been stinkers. So, first up, Death Shroud Terminators. The big Scythe boys themselves. It's hard to not see why these are so good. They all have anti-infantry flamers, so this means no matter the toughness of an enemy infantry unit, you wound them on a 4-up. There ignores cover. You have D6 per guy, and your sergeant can dual wield them for 2d6. It's a lot of spray in there, and they automatically hit. So it's really good anti-chaff, anti-light infantry mass removal. And then in close combat, these guys hit like a truck. They can either have 4 attacks at strength 8, AP2, 2 damage, and these guys hit on 2s, not 3s like normal Marines. These are elite. Or you can sweep for 6 attacks at strength 5, AP0, 1 damage. Now, 90% of the time, you're always going to go with the strike, I won't lie. But you've also got lethal hits, so 6 to hit auto wound. And these guys are packing 4 attacks per guy. So in a squad of 3, because these guys are going to be taking 3s or 6s, you have 12 attacks, hitting on 2s, 8, 2, 2. And if you took -1 save, that can be 8, 3, 2. You can pay a command point to give them extra AP for a strat, and make them 8, -4, 2, which is kind of wild. They have deep strikes. They can teleport in onto the board, which means you can use rapid ingress, which is one of the most powerful stratagems in the game. If you don't know what that is, I would recommend you checking out any video on rapid ingress. I will try and get one up soon on how to use rapid ingress well in Death Guard, but it's a very powerful unit. Stratagem, sorry, to use on this unit. Not only that, if they're leading a unit, so if they're being led, sorry, if a character has joined them, they also are -1 to wound if your toughness is lower than the opponent's attacking strength. So it's really hard to wound these guys on a freeze in general, and it's impossible to wound them on 2s unless they have a +1 to wound to negate the -1 to wound, and their strength 12 plus. With a toughness 6, 3 wounds, 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable, these guys are rock solid. Fantastic unit. The only downside is the 4-inch move, which is quite slow, but usually these guys are going to teleport into somewhere, clear out the area that they landed in, and then kind of stick around. So you kind of want to drop them near objectives or something of high value, so that if they go in, they wipe out something huge and then can pressure something else afterwards, or just stick around where they are, scoring points and holding objectives. So some things you can do with Death Shroud. With Typhus in the squad, he makes them -1 to hit in close combat, and with their own rule, they can be -1 to wound, so you -1 to hit and wound. And then if you took the minus ballistic skill and weapon skill contagion, that actually stacks with Typhus. So if you're against Marines who normally hit on 3s, they now hit on 4s because of Typhus' ability. And the -1 weapon skill and ballistic skill stacks because it's not a hit roll modifier, so it does work. And now they're hitting on 5s, which is grim. Making Marines hit on 5s, Custodians can hit on 4s, Orcs hit on 5s, anything with power claws in Orcs hits on 6s. Tyranids, a lot of bugs have weapon skill 4, the smaller ones, they're hitting on 6s. Really powerful, really makes this unit hard to deal with. The character combos, you can give them a lot of contagion for reroll all hits, and this allows you to fish for lethal hits. So when we say fishing, what it means is, say you're against a really tough vehicle, you want 6s to hit to auto wound it, so you roll all your attacks, you take all the 6s out, and then even the ones that have already hit, you're going to re-roll them to try and get more 6s. That's called fishing. It's really good, really makes the unit great at killing vehicles as well. A couple of good rolls at AP3 and 2 damage each, especially the Lord of Contagion himself, who's flat damage free, which is really nice. Makes the unit really reliable at killing tough units. You have anti-infantry flamers, plus a Lord of Virulence, that's the LOV there, couldn't fit it on, sorry. That's really good, because it means that you're wounding infantry on 4s with flamers, you're against Custodians who are on like T6, you wound them on 4s, and you get to reroll all those dice, and every 4-up's a wound, it's going to make them take a save. You can then combine this with the Stratagem Ferric Blight for 1 command point, which makes them extra AP, so now their AP won't ignore cover, that's good. But people forget there's a second part to that stratagem, which is a critical wound if the target's near a contaminated objective. A critical wound is an additional AP, but when you trigger anti-infantry, that always counts as a critical wound. So potentially, you can be spraying, if you're a full squad, like 8d6 flamers that are AP2 whenever they wound, which is grim because it ignores cover, and those Custodians will be dropping like flies. These guys are going to teach you to use Rapid Ingress. Rapid Ingress being the most powerful stratagem. You basically drop in your opponent at the end of your opponent's movement phase, which means that when it comes to your turn, you're free to move, which means you can move your 4 inches or 5 with Typhus for some reason, and then you get a 5-inch charge or a 4-inch charge respectively. Much better than making a 9-inch Hail Mary charge, so it's really good. And this unit's also going to teach you to Overwatch. So it's going to teach you, because the flamers are auto-hitting, it's going to teach you that you can drop in an area near an objective, and you can basically dominate an entire board space from like infantry models, because if they want to come near you or move past you, you're going to be able to Overwatch them with potentially, like I said, up to 8d6 sprayer hits that automatically hit. So you don't need 6s to hit in Overwatch, they automatically hit, and they can automatically wound on a 4-up. If you got a lot of virulence there, then you can reroll wounds, and it kind of gets gross. So they're really good at teaching you board control. Chaos Rhinos. Chaos Rhinos are a brilliant unit. Rhinos you're always going to want. They're always going to be good for Death Guard. They help us out with our movement problems, because they have a movement of 12. They can carry up to 12 Plague Marines, or 10 Plague Marines, 2 characters, etc. 12 spaces, basically, in the Rhino. They have a few guns. You're not really too fussed about that. But what it's really going to do is teach you how to use transports effectively, and what's really important is making the most out of transports, especially in today's modern game. They're also really good because they have fire in deck, so we'll go ahead. You're gonna there you go. Teach you to use transports, which is great. The importance of trading and when to get out of the transport, when to stay inside, nice and safe in the transport. They have fire in deck, which means 2 models that are inside the Rhino can actually shoot out of the top of the Rhino. So you can have flamers coming out of your Rhino, you can have a psychic attacks coming out of your Rhino, plasma guns, whatever you need. So it can kind of turn into like a little versatile gunboat, which is really nice, especially with flamethrowers, because you can drive up to a point, 2d6 sprayers out the top, then all the bolt gun shots, then charge the Rhino in. It's going to teach you the importance of utility units, because once you've got guys out of the Rhino, you can use it for all sorts of stuff. You can use it to go and do actions, as we said before, to score objectives. You can use it to drive up to opponents to spread contagion range. You can use it to contest objectives. You can use it to charge into units to keep them locked in combat so they can't do anything else in their turn. And again, this is an empty Rhino. No one really wants to shoot an empty Rhino. There's nothing in it. It's not much point, but you can learn how to be really annoying, move block with the empty Rhino. There's tons of uses of an empty Rhino. It's kind of mad. Another thing it's going to teach you is staging and disembarking for the charge. So staging is the idea of, and again, check out Faction Fundamentals Deployment. We talk a lot about staging there, but it's the idea of getting a transport into a spot that's hidden and safe. But what it means is if your opponent comes near it, in your turn, they're at risk of you getting outside of the Rhino 3 inches. Then you can move, so that's another 5 inches. So you've gone from a 5-inch move on a normal Plague Marine to 8 inches, and then you can still charge 2d6. So it creates this kind of zone of control around that area of the board where someone can't come in because they're at risk of being charged by your unit. So that's really good, and it's a really good skill to learn, especially for Death Guard and Plague Marine plays. And lastly, the Foul Blight Spawn. The Foul Blight Spawn is a character that attaches to Plague Marines. He has a really nasty flamer. It's anti-infantry 2+, so regardless of the toughness, if they're an infantry, 2s to wound. Automatically hits with d6 shots. And it's AP 2 and 2 damage. And it's also strength 7, so it's not awful for shooting at light vehicles. So the real magic of this guy, though, is the fact that his ability is when he joins a unit, the models in that unit have fight first. So what this means is, if it's your opponent's turn and your opponent charges you, normally they would fight before you do. But with this guy's ability, you actually fight before them, even in their own turn. So what this means is that you can basically have 10 Plague Marines with melee weapons behind a wall on an objective, and they're functionally immune to charging, in a way. There are ways around it, but no one wants to charge you because you're going to swing first, and 10 Plague Marines on an objective is probably going to kill most things that charge into it. So again, this is going to be another great unit that's going to teach you sort of board control. It's going to teach you that sometimes just standing on an objective can win you the game without ever having to swing. I had a tournament game recently, 10 Plague Marines with fights first sat on an objective against Tau. Tau could never get a shooting angle at them, and they can't charge them because of how I'd set it up. And if they charge me, I fight first. So they didn't actually kill a single model all game, but that one unit scored me over the course of the game, 7, 14, 28 victory points. 28! And the rest of my army just focused on denying the Tau victory points. So in the end, their 28 points compared to the Tau's 10 I kept them on, won me the game. And it never had to swing once, and that's going to teach you the importance of having units that can do these kind of abilities. He also has a great weapon to use on the firing deck, as we said before, to shoot out the top of rhinos. It's also great if you're in a melee meta, so if you have a lot of like World Eater players, Orc players, stuff like that. It's a great piece of tech to sort of go against melee, because no one really wants to charge him, because again, you will fight first. And also, he has really nice Overwatch as well, because it is a flamer. So if you put him in the squad, give the squad 2 spewers as well, you've got really nice 3d6 flamers there that wound infantry on 2s. Really nice. But he's always been solid. 50 points, put him in a squad, becomes a nightmare for a lot of armies to deal with. So, great unit. So, I'm just going to quick sipping my drink. 1 second. Thank you. Throat gets very dry. So now we're going to look at some 1,000-point lists that me and the guys have come up with. Again, these are just examples and some suggestions of lists. Feel free to come up with your own. But these ones I think that actually have a play and like a plan behind it, a play style behind it. And you can sort of maybe take some inspiration from these, or just take them directly. So first up is my kind of list. This is a balanced tactical toolbox list. TAC stands for take all comers. Toolbox means this list doesn't try to force something. You take a bit of everything and it gives you the tools to win the game. And really, it's up to the player's skill to learn to use the tools correctly and apply them. You will never be caught with your pants down. You'll always have an answer for a situation. But the hard thing is knowing what's important in which matchup, rather than relying on something like just skewing a stat line. So I like this for people that are just starting the game. Because it's basically going to teach you many different things and teach you to be versatile. So, first up, we've tried to use as much combat patrol as we can. I've used all of it in this list. So, if you have got a combat patrol, you're off to a cracking start. So, we've got Typhus, again, great unit. He's going to be in there, just doing his mortal wounds, really nice melee profile. And he's basically going to be joining some Poxwalkers, which we'll get to. We have a Lord of Contagion, or Virulence, kind of just depends on your preference. I'd recommend Contagion here, because I think he gets a bit more value in this list than the Lord of Virulence, but it depends whether you want to be a melee monster or if you want to be a bit better at the shooting with the flamers, Lord of Virulence. And you have spare points to give these guys the +1 strength, +1 attack enhancement, which is nice. Biologist Putrefier's in there. Again, as we covered in the previous video, I won't go deep diving. We talked about him last video, what he can do. He's going to join the Plague Marines. We're going to have a 7-man Plague Marine squad, again from the Combat Patrol. We've got a mixture of melee and shooting on them because we want them to be nice and versatile, so you're not just stuck melee only or shooting only. You can, hop out a Rhino, shoot some shots off, then charge in. Maybe you've got a Rhino to 2 wounds. This squad jumps out, shoots it, blows up the Rhino. The guys get out, and then you're free to charge who was inside the Rhino and chop them to pieces. You've got all 30 Poxwalkers. You've got 1 big unit of 20 and 1 unit of 10. The 10-man Poxwalkers can be used as a utility scoring unit to hold home objective, to sort of go off to the side and score things. Or it can be used to initiate trades, so that's really good. 20-man Poxwalker unit is going to be joined by Typhus. Again, it's just a really hard brick. If you manage to kill most of your opponent's high volume shots, weapons, and you've left them with like las cannons and that's it, keeping this unit off the table in reserves and then bringing it in once you've killed those units that can kill it, this thing can be unstoppable. Like, people really struggle to kill this unit if you have taken out the anti-infantry firepower. So again, it's a tool that you need to learn to use. You look at your opponent, they go, okay, how much Gatling guns have they got? Okay, they've got 1 Gatling gun. I will use the rest of my army to kill the Gatling gun, and then we will bring in this unit who's going to sweep house because the opponent now no longer has an answer. Or alternative, maybe your opponent has lots of anti-tank weapons, so this unit starts on the board because your vehicles would just explode. Again, toolbox, the idea of using the tools to your advantage. You have a unit of 3 Death Shroud Terminators to go with your Lord of choice. Again, this is going to teach you about deep striking, it's going to teach you about rapid ingressing. And it's just a nice unit to have, hard-hitting, elite, tough to kill. You've got 2 Mythic Blight Haulers. I like these guys because they're quite cheap to buy monetarily wise, but also it gives the list a little bit of anti-tank. It's not the most meta of units, but again, it's a nice cheap kit that you can pick up. Give you some anti-tank options, so if you do run into an opponent who's brought like a Redemptor Dreadnought, because again, 1,000 points, you're not going to see tons of vehicles, at least you shouldn't, against people that are also taking balanced lists. But it gives you an answer, something hard-hitting, and something that's fairly durable itself. Your Fetid Bloat Drone, so a bit of speed now, a bit of speed. It can also fall back, charge and shoot, so it's hard to lock down. Can do a bit of early pressure, spread some early contagions, has fly, can score some objectives. And that can be equipped with any weapon of preference. Fleshmaw if you like being aggressive, Plague Spitter if you like being board controlly, and the Heavy Blight Launcher if you want something that can sort of just skirt the flanks and provide shots into the battle. And last but not least, a Chaos Rhino to ferry around your Plague Marines because it's a really good utility. So the cost to expand to this from the Combat Patrol would be £163.50. The prices in here are straight from GW Direct, so you can get them cheaper at your friendly local game store. So always check with them first, check online. You can find better discounts. But yeah, the idea of this list is to use a lot of variety. So you can try out different things. Maybe you really like one unit, maybe this unit you don't like that much. But the idea is you can get a nice feel for different variety of units using the Death Guard line. I tried to stay away from generic CSM models because, in my opinion, most people who pick Death Guard because of the Death Guard. You want to play the Death Guard. You want to play the Blight Lords, the Death Shroud, Poxwalkers, the Plague Marines. You don't want to be playing Predators, Land Raiders. I mean, you do probably at some point, but you want your core to be that meaty Death Guard center. It's toolbox by design, which means that you have lots of answers. So you got some anti-vehicle, you got a lot of anti-infantry, you got some trading, you got some scoring, and it's going to teach you all the little ways to sort of play around and understand when you look at your opponent's army. Okay, look at my own army and think, now what are the most valuable units in this matchup? Because that's one of the things people really struggle with. A lot of people just kind of play a list, they bring it and they go, okay, it plays the same into this as it plays the same into everything else. Whereas the reality is, toolbox lists don't work like that. You have to look at your opponent and go, okay, in this matchup, the Poxwalkers are worth a lot of value. Or maybe it's all vehicles and Poxwalkers ain't going to do shit. So you go, okay, the Blight Halls are where the value's at. So it's understanding that and understanding that thought process and getting that into your head early is going to be really good for you as a player to grow upon. Has a balanced mixture of shooting and melee. Again, we want to learn all the phases possible. It's great just as a player to sort of get comfortable using all the different phases, all the different tricks. because the more you play something, the more you will get comfortable, the faster you will get at it. So maybe this list is harder to play at first because it's got all the different things going on. But once you get more comfortable with it and you start playing it and getting there, you will actually grow quicker than someone that's just maybe playing with the same 3 units over and over and just focusing on shooting or melee. And again, you have a balanced unit role. So you have units that can do everything, and this will help teach you what units are good at what. So you'll learn when to expose the Plague Marines, you'll learn when to bring in the Death Shroud, you'll learn when to just put some Poxwalkers up front to initiate a trade. This list will teach you all of these things and help you become a better player, okay? So the next one, this is Will's list. So this is a more mechanized list, so quite a bit, it's what we call a skew list because it leans harder into a certain archetype. So this one's lots of vehicles. So again, he's tried to include some combat patrol. So he's got Typhus, the Biologist Putrefier. Will's added in a Foul Blight spawn to try and make that Plague Marine brick harder to interact with. He's gone for 10 Poxwalkers from the combat patrol. He said this is just to hold your home objective, basically. You've got some Death Shroud Terminators in reserves, probably with Typhus, so they can drop in, be a bit of a hammer unit here. You've got a Rhino to ferry around your Plague Marines, as is standard. And then, Will's gone for a bit more of a gun line, so he's gone for 2 Chaos Predator Destructors and a Plague Burst Crawler. So a bit more mechanized, a lot of tanks here. So the idea being that the Predator Destructors have your shooting basically covered. Really nice mixture of anti-tank with the las cannons and anti-elite or anti-infantry with the top guns. The Plague Burst Crawler is another great unit. It's quite tough, can take a lot of punishment. Has flamethrowers on the side, which are 2-up anti-infantry, so really good for killing hordes. The Mortar has indirect, which will teach you sort of how to use indirect, which is quite nice. But this list itself, the idea obviously seems to be that you keep your tanks for your main shooting, whilst the Plague Burst Crawler and the Plague Marine Rhino bus can sort of push forward and then be supported by the Death Shroud Deep Strike, whilst the Poxwalkers hold home. So the cost to expand to this one is £219.50. Again, MSRP, you can get it cheaper. Has obviously a heavier focus on vehicles, so if you're more of a tread head, as we call them, someone that likes tanks, this could be quite good for you. Has a much higher focus on shooting, but still does include some melee with the Death Shroud and the Plague Marines. But this list obviously has a lot fewer units to play around with. You're looking at less quantity but higher quality, so the Predators need to get more value out of them. So learning how to maneuver them to get lines of sight and stuff, it's going to be really good for teaching you how to use vehicles properly. One thing I suck with personally is vehicles. I'm an infantry player. I play infantry much better. Will uses a lot of vehicles. He's used to moving them around. So if you're the idea of, I really like tanks. Tanks are my favourite thing in 40k. I want to use lots of vehicles, lots of tanks. This is a pretty good starting point. Predators are really good in the game at the moment. Plague Burst Crawls are a staple of Death Guard. And this will teach you to basically learn how to position tanks, to set up firing lanes, to dominate areas of the board, and also how to basically use them, shutting down certain angles of approach to protect your Rhino and the Plague Burst Crawls making the push, and also keep openings available for the Death Shroud Terminators to come in. So that's really cool. It's a very different style of list. Like I said, you have a lot less on the table, so you have a lot less tools to work with, and it's all about understanding how to play vehicles, maximize it the most, and basically blow your opponent off the board from far away, keeping your tank safe with their 48-inch superior range, whilst still having a few units to sort of go up, pressure the opponent, and pressure the objectives. And the last one is a pressure list. So this is a full-on balls to the walls in your face list. So we've got Typhus, we've got double Biologist Putrefier, Foul Blight spawn again for a fight firster, 2 squads of 7 Plague Marines. We've got some Melter Guns in there this time instead of dual Plasma. This is because of a lack of anti-tank sort of, so having the extra Melter Guns can really help out. Double Chaos Rhino, so we're going to have really fast Plague Marines going forward. 10 Poxwalkers to hold home objective. Go always have something to hold home. 3 Death Shroud Terminators waiting in Deep Strike with Typhus, so these guys are going to be sat off the board. Then basically turn 1 you apply a lot of pressure, and Typhus is the second wave to drop in and sort of be the killing blow. So we've also got 2 fetid bloat drones. So you can imagine this list, guys inside the Rhinos, bloat drone with each Rhino to support it. They're all going to fly forward, get into good mid-board positions, put pressure on your opponent. Your opponent has to make something happen. If they don't, then next turn they're going to get attacked by all the Plague Marines, both bloat drones, and the Terminators dropping in at a deep strike. And at this point, if your opponent hasn't gotten out of their deployment zone, they're going to be stuck there for a while. your empty Rhinos can go and claim objectives and score stuff, whilst your Plague Marines and your Death Shroud and your Bloat Drones are pressuring and keeping your opponent on the back foot. So the cost to expand this is £226.50. Again, MSRP. Teaches a very aggressive playstyle. This is not my kind of thing at all. If you're an aggressive player and you know you like being aggressive and you like games that are dead killy, this might be a good one for you. But it does teach you that aggression doesn't mean you full send it. You don't just run at your opponent in the open, because guess what? You will die. It's going to teach you about staging, about getting into mid-board positions, waiting for the right moment, and then full sending it in. It's going to teach you threat saturation. So the idea that, okay, if I expose one bloat drone on its own, my opponent can kill it. But if I expose 2 bloat drones and 2 rhinos, all of which are threatening, sure, your opponent can kill one. Maybe they can kill one on a rhino, but they definitely can't kill it all. And then the Death Shroud also pop in. And people can crumble under that kind of pressure. And even if you don't kill them all, and let's say you eventually die, the idea is you've kept your opponent on the back foot for so long that you've managed to rack up a score with the other units that your opponent basically can't recover from. So if you like the idea of being aggressive, getting into your opponent's lines, being the one that's sort of setting the tempo of the game rather than reacting to it, again, I'm a reactionary player, Will's a very more take control kind of player, then this is a list that might be interesting to you. Again, any weapons on the bloat drones are pretty good, although I would probably preface like flesh mowers in this one, maybe plague spitters, because heavy blight launchers, again, kind of long range, stay back shooting, whereas this list wants you to be up there, aggressive, in your opponent's face, being annoying, killing stuff, whilst empty rhinos run around and score. But yeah, so you can see 3 very different kind of lists there. We've got a balanced toolbox list for you to sort of play around with lots of different units, find out what's good for you. You've got a mechanized gunline kind of shooting list there. And last but not least, you've got a very aggressive, fast, in your opponent's face pressure list. As you can see, a lot of those lists did include those staple units, rhinos, foul blight spawns, and death shroud. So if you're sat there and you're thinking, oh, that's a lot of money to drop at once, I don't want to go get that because it's 200 quid or something, totally fair, totally fine. But if I could just pick one unit for you, it'd be one of those 3. And I'd probably say the death shroud and the rhino are the most important. So consider that. But yeah, just a summary. So finding your style is incredibly important. It's all about finding what works for you as a player, what you enjoy, what makes you have fun, and what works in your brain and how you think to make it happen on the battlefield. Some units are staple, so no matter what in all these lists, the Death Shroud showed up, the Foul Blight Spawn showed up in 2 of them, and the Rhino showed up in all of them. So no matter what playstyle, some units are just always there. Plague Marines are a great example. So having a grasp of these units will help inform what you should buy, because they're going to be units that you're always going to find use out of, rather than getting more niche units, probably like the Predators. Predators are great, don't get me wrong, Predators are fantastic at the moment, but again, Predators aren't right for every list, whereas Plague Marines probably are right for every list. Death Shroud show up in every list, so units like that you're always going to get use out of. Understand 1,000 point field bads. Again, like I said, games at 1,000 points aren't necessarily balanced. They can swing really hard one way or the other. Don't be disheartened by it. It's just the way it is. Again, doesn't mean don't play it. Definitely play 1,000 points. Learn the game, get used to it. But understand those games are going to happen where the game just kind of, the dice just abandons someone and it goes really skewed really quickly. But again, don't worry about it too much. Just keep focusing on learning the game and playing it and getting comfortable with it. And from these games, start to plan towards 2,000 points. Start to understand what you're enjoying. Where's the fun? I like tanks. I like infantry. Oh, the Poxwalker is really fun. I want on 60 of the damn things. Understanding early at 1,000 points what you think your preferred playstyle will be when you start noticing it. It's like, okay, I have more success with X list over Y list. That's going to help inform your future decisions and your future purchases, and help you starting to plan towards your first 2,000 points list, okay? And last but not least, obviously the golden rule. If it's cool, it's the rule. Make sure you're doing what you're enjoying this hobby, because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, this is a hobby, not a job. Do what's fun. But yeah, that's it for this episode. So thank you very much. Sponsors on the screen, Saltire Games. If you need any gaming aids, such as measuring sticks, objective markers, check them out. There's a link in the description for promo code NERGLE, which gives me a little bit of kickback, gives you a little bit of a discount. So it's going to benefit both of us, and you can get some really cool gaming aids that are NERGLE themed. Maybe hold on a day or two, because I think we're getting some disgusting resilient ones. specially ones. They'd be really cool if you could have them. Be that fancy logo, really nice. And also thank you to Vanguard Tactics. So their affiliate link is in the description if you want to learn at a much faster pace to, you know, maybe you're new to the hobby, or maybe you've been playing for a while and you want to take it to the next level, or get an accelerator course. Check out the links in the description. Those guys sell coaching services, and Vanguard Academy is starting up. There's lots of cool things going on there. Check them out in the description. And last but not least, thank you to members for, you know, supporting the channel. I have 2 monitors now, so this is going to get a lot easier. And also you may notice something at the start as well, which probably hasn't been on any other video yet so far, and that's all because of the support you guys have given me, and I'm trying to put it back into the channel to make these videos as good as I can. And thank you to you as well, the listener and the viewer right now. Yeah, you right there. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and a subscribe. It really does help way more than you think. The YouTube algorithm monster is an algorithm monster for a reason. So comments, likes, subscribes, all helps. At the time of recording this, I'm 8 subs, I think, away from 4K, which is wild. But I'm really excited to reach that milestone, and we'll be having a giveaway to celebrate it, plus some other extra content that, you know, maybe some guests, etc. So look forward to that. But for now, enjoy your night. If you're new to 40k, welcome to 40k. Hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you on the next one. Stay rotten, everybody. See you later. And I can't find the recording button. There we go, found it. Bye!